guys, what's going on? It's Roth and Eric, the dragons on the wall.
We were just debating whether we, in fact, are the dragons.
I say that we are absolutely the dragons.
I did not know I was trying to embody a dragon, but I'll attempt to get into dragon mode.
Work on it, man.
Dragon Zord mode. Are you Power Rangers fans?
Vermithrax.
Yeah.
Couple of dragons watching the wheels go round and round. We're going to talk about Game of Thrones right now. Specifically, we're going to talk about Game of Thrones, Season 5, Episode 4, Sons of the Harpy.
Sons of the Harpy.
Full spoilers ahead.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen it and you don't want to get spoiled, I would not watch this video. And I would come back when you have. Okay, let's dive in. What did you think of the episode?
I thought it was really good, and it was interesting to kind of see how we really are getting these two almost parallel stories here, because the episode was called Sons of the Harpy, but we also saw the Sparrows really up what they were doing. So you really had sort of both in King's Landing, and I'm forgetting the land exactly where Dany is right now.
Marine.
Yeah. So you had in both places this sort of unrest happening with these groups, these very sort of fanatical groups rising up and really causing chaos.
We are thinkers alike, because that's what I wrote down as my general thoughts. I thought what's really interesting to me as this season is evolving, and the tactic that I think that they've taken in terms of the storytelling for the show was to focus it on the rise of fanaticism. Obviously, yes, with these groups. Like the Sparrows are clearly religious fanatics. And the... I wouldn't call the Sons of the Harpy religious fanatics.
It's not the same,
They're cultural fanatics. They feel that they have been robbed of their culture and they want to take it back, you know. But also you have things like Melisandre, you know, and sort of her take on the Lord of Light and being willing to burn loads of people alive in the name of life.
Yeah, we're kind of being reminded of the different belief systems, often religious but not always, but that these people are coming with their own sort of not just agenda as far as like, I want to do this, but like if you really truly believe in the grander scheme, this is how things are supposed to go.
Absolutely. And you could even, you could toss in Varys to that mix as somebody who really, really believes in sort of seemingly, according to him, in what the realm needs in terms of leadership and really being devoted to the monarchy. That's an interesting thing to me too, is that the folks that like don't even think that, and you understand it, but like if you've only had a monarchy ever, why would you really think that there's another way? Except that the free folk show you that there is.
Right.
So that's been something that
So will Game of Thrones end with the first election in Westeros?
That's my theory, but it's not an election. I mean, it wouldn't be that. Now I'm spilling my whole theory. I was gonna write a whole editorial about this. I still can, but but literally that is my theory, that I have a whole theory, but that's a different topic. I'll swing back to that at another time. But yes, democracy.
Yeah, democracy. Times are changing.
In short, democracy. That's what this whole story's been about.
But it was funny because it was called Sons of the Harpy, and certainly the end of the episode really upped that. But yeah, it was really, early on, us seeing the Sparrows, and last week we met the High Sparrow, and he put on a very friendly face, and it seems sort of a kind guy. But then we really saw them getting very dark and really just bursting in, and just how far they'll go, which obviously got very personal for Marjorie because of her brother being taken, and is going to once again sort of put in the spotlight the Marjorie-Cersei face-off.
Power play,
because Cersei can act all she wants, like, oh, I didn't know anything about this, but But
she is a really brilliant, particularly, it's interesting, we talk about differences in the book and the show, we won't get into that now, but particularly in the depiction of her depiction on the show. She is a very brilliant power player, and this was seemingly a good move. However, I will say this, if you're talking about arming people that are not swayed by wealth or power, which are the two things that you have as a Lannister, then you can only hold them in your sway for so long. And if they, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's a risky move, but but right now it's working for her, in terms of with Loras, and really she's just trying to get to Marjorie. And that is the interesting thing too about the Sparrows and kind of any fanatics. You find yourself wondering like, well, why couldn't you just stop at the place where you fed people soup?
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, why do you then have to go to, and I know what's best for the whole world, and I'll prove it by carving things into my forehead and beating you with sticks.
Yeah. And then going back to the Sons of the Harpy, because it was the name of the episode, we kind of really saw them make their bigger play here at the end of the episode. I will say they kind of telegraphed pretty heavily that something awful was going to happen to Sir Barristan.
They sure did.
Because it was a very TV thing to do, where a character who's kind of there, the periphery, we like him, but it's not like he gets the spotlight, suddenly has such a warm moment with Dany.
Oh, you knew he was...
It was like, I actually jotted down, like, well, something bad is about to happen to him.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because it was like, where did this come from, you know?
We're loving you in this moment. You were definitely not long for this world.
Right, because it was a great scene for both of them. It was seeing a different side, you know, Dany getting to sort of reminisce about her, well, not reminisce, she wasn't there or cognizant of it, but to kind of talk about her family, who she often hears of in just negative terms, in a different light.
Yes.
And yeah, and him getting to really go into that and that history that is very interesting for all of us who are big fans. But at the same time, it was also such a warm moment between the two of them. It was like, yeah, something bad's going to happen.
Well, you know, he got to go out strong,
right?
You know,
right.
He went out like a hero and a warrior, which is what he is. I mean, you forget, like, it's interesting because it's, you know, it's an interesting thing in the show when you hear these people that you're seeing and they're legend, like this great warrior and this and that. And then you saw him in that moment. You're like, this old man can fight.
Oh yeah,
you know, like, and it's very impressive and brave and heroic and tragic and sad. And there's obviously huge cultural fallout happening here. I think he's dead. You said you think he's maybe not.
I think he probably is dead, but I just was saying on Game of Thrones, when deaths can be so graphically definitive, his was a little less so, in that it had that tiny bit of wiggle room for them to save him. But yeah, I think it's 99% that was the end for him. Both because, you know, because dramatically that is how it was played, and it was kind of him kind of getting that one last act of glory and fighting for what he believed was right. So yeah, he's probably gone. It was a great sequence. Him and Grey Worm both kind of stepping up, and yeah.
He died for Grey Worm. All right, we're gonna end it right there. I know that plenty more happened in this episode. There's so much more to talk about, but we are going to have our longer show, which will be up on Monday. So if you're watching this on Sunday after the Game of Thrones aired, you can check us out on Monday to get a lot more in depth about this episode. For now, what did you think? What do you think about the season so far? Do you think that he's dead? Or could he be alive?
Probably not.
Could he be a walker?
Yeah.
Probably not, since he died. Nowhere near there. All right, leave your comments below. Come back and check out more. Now let's dive in deep.
Yeah.
Diving in deep. So let's talk about what's happening over at the Wall.
Yeah.
Interesting to me that the moment between Jon and Melisandre I find very fascinating, because I have to wonder what she's after.
Right.
And I don't think it's just getting laid.
No. I mean,
this is not a woman who functions that way.
She doesn't, yeah. And so we were talking about that because you were theorizing who did she want to make a scary smoke monster baby to kill. And I don't know if it was specifically that, but certainly there was a goal there, a probably macabre, infused goal of why she would want to sleep with Jon Snow. And that goes beyond even just like, I want to have him like ensnare him and manipulate him, because she is pretty specific when she seduces people about what's going on.
Absolutely, and the only reason that we've seen her do that previously was to make the smoke monster, the baby that killed Renly.
Yeah.
So I believe that the rules were, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the rules were for that she could make the smoke monster baby, but it would kill someone that was related to the seed donator.
How to Make a Smoke Monster Baby is a great book, by the way. You should read it. Yeah.
But so I was like, if that's the case, and maybe I'm making that up, who is related to Jon that she would want to kill with a smoke monster?
I don't know, because of course she seems to know more than she should. So now you have to ask, like, does she know Arya and Sansa are alive?
Yeah.
You know, since nobody really knows their fate out there. There's a lot of assumptions and whatnot, except for Brienne, who keeps running into them and being scorned.
Brienne seems to, she's a poor woman. But I mean, also, and we'll talk about this later a little bit more in depth, but maybe she knows something about his lineage that we don't.
Right.
And we start to think about who the biggest threats to Stannis are, because everything that she has done to date has been in the name of furthering Stannis' cause, right? But what's interesting too is that the Lord of Light seems to be backing a couple of different ponies here, because he's got Melisandre going like, Stannis is the one true king, no doubt in my mind. But then over on the other side of the world, you got one of his priestesses saying, no, it's Daenerys.
Maybe the Lord of Light is like Littlefinger and wants to have multiple options. You know?
What I think is that if we were to imagine that the Lord of Light is overseeing all of this, then there is a grander plan in play, and they're all just like a piece of it, including Melisandre.
Rutger Hauer should play the Lord of Light.
Oh my God!
I don't know why that came to me.
Because you're a genius.
All right. Or Christopher Lambert, one or the other.
Because you're an absolute genius.
Thank you.
Let's talk about poor Tommen. That poor kid. I do feel for him because his mom played him like a fiddle. Like, oh, did I arrest him?
Yeah.
It's that game that really good manipulators do when they ask something in such a way that you can't argue with them, even though they're totally wrong.
Yeah.
And lying.
And obviously, Marjorie here is like, trying to do all she can to free her brother. And Tommen is about to have sort of a moment of truth here about how much power does he have, as he's the king. But it's like his mom's really been pulling the strings, and continues to, more than he knows, of course, because she's doing all this sort of like double dealing and meeting with the High Sparrow and all this stuff that he has no idea about.
But also he has no power over his own people, because it was obvious, and he at least had the wits about him to realize that if he had charged in there, he was about to start a riot.
Yeah.
And that was going to get very dangerous for everybody. Daenerys is in a tricky position as a leader right now too, and she seems to be a little unsure. She seemed in that moment with Sir Barristan to be a little unsure whether she really wanted this. She's sitting up on high, and we've talked about this idea of like kind of that she has this fanatical belief in her right to the throne. I think she actually does. And she's sitting up there going, well, they look happy enough from here. It was like a very, wow, she could go to like a Marie Antoinette place, like.
Right, and but of course with her
she wouldn't. She's.
Right, but has both viewers of the show and then the readers of the book saying it's like for everyone who wants her to kind of just power through and get to Westeros, but she is still young, and she did have, there was important reasons she stayed where she was. She was this sort of grand goal of freeing the slaves, and that these people really need help. But yeah, you have to think that, given her age and the fact that, the way she was raised, which was kind of knowing who she was, but still not in any position of power, she has to have moments of self-doubt and of, is this the right call? Is this the right path for me? Should I keep going? Should I go to Westeros? Should I stay here where things are getting dicier and dicier? They were about to get even worse for her after that moment, but she didn't know that. I think it makes sense that she would have that doubt right now, because while she has a lot of people praising her and, bowing down to her, she's also seeing just, I don't know how, so is Tommen, but in a different way, seeing what that really means and all the trouble that comes with that.
All the trouble and how complex of an equation that is, because you can't please everyone.
Right.
It's just a completely impossible undertaking. And if you are going to radically change a way a city functions, even just a city functions, there's going to be fallout. People do not like that kind of change overnight.
Oh yeah.
And there's consequences to it in terms of like, well, what's their financial structure now? Like, how is money coming into the city? How is it going to be protected? What happens to these people now that they're free?
Yeah.
Where do they work?
Where do they work? Where do they live?
Yeah.
How does it all work?
And like, those are the decisions that she's very good at grand gestures, but those are the nitty-gritty things. Like, she needs a council.
I was going to say she needs a Tyrion.
She does need a Tyrion. And he's being delivered in a bed.
Yeah. He's coming her way. So we'll see how that goes.
It will be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah. I did want to mention, because it wasn't a huge thing in the episode, but I did want, because we mentioned Littlefinger and Sansa a little bit in a tangent earlier, but it was interesting when he kind of laid out the idea that, you could marry Ramsay and gain power that way, or Stannis is coming, and that idea of like, if Stannis succeeds in taking back the North, they could then reveal who Sansa really is, and then she could kind of be left in charge, like her father used to be of the North.
The wardeness of the North.
Yeah.
And you could see that he is, he really is training her. And I think that was what we've talked about that before, but that was one of the fascinating things in that moment, to be like, you're being guided by the best at this, by the way, lucky girl. You're being tutored by the very best at this particular thing. And you can, now, we know that she cannot manipulate crazy Ramsay. He's just too insane.
Right.
Way too insane. But he's trying to empower her to go for what instead of being a observer of her fate, being the driver of her dark destiny. I think he's trying to entice her. He's like, this is the carrot. You could have this power. You could be the wardeness of the North.
Right. I was arguing, by the way, with someone, I don't remember now if it was in our comments or on Twitter, but someone who was like, oh, Littlefinger must have been playing it, to the vest when he acted like he didn't know who Ramsay is. He knows everything. I'm like, no, because I just don't believe we're supposed to think that he would just give Sansa over to her, because Littlefinger is scary and not a good guy, but we also it's very clear that this attraction, love, obsession for Catelyn has been put to Sansa, and I don't think he would be like, here's the guy who flays people.
Not at all. He wouldn't do that, because he does. I think in his mind he is using her as a pawn in his larger game. He is maneuvering for sure and trying to secure a power base, a large power base. As he said, you're talking about when these two groups put their heads together, they toppled the biggest dynasty we've ever known. So, but he's also putting her in a jar a little bit. He's like, I'm gonna come back for you. I'm gonna break that jar.
He wants her He wants her to love him. And whether that's in a parental way as a lover or both, it's all both. Twisted and weird. But he does want her to love him, and it would not help him in that regard to be like, here's this psychopath.
Also, the psycho could kill her.
Yeah.
And then what does he have?
Exactly.
He has no more pawn, and he wouldn't do that. And also, it's not like, listen, I mean, they don't have Twitter and Facebook for people to be like, did you know what I just heard about? Or do they? Yeah. I mean, it's entirely plausible that he went under the radar. And he does not know about his insanity.
Yeah.
Probably going to find out.
Right.
And that's pretty unfortunate. But she's had such a fascinating journey, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of their conversation in a minute. We get into book stuff. Do we want reader questions, or are there more things?
There's one thing we have to talk about, which is some sand snakes action. I'll talk about actually finally meeting.
How did I forget that?
Yeah. And they were badass.
They were awesome. They were terrifying and awesome. I mean, I think it was a not subtle, but still I enjoyed it, moment when Bran killed the serpent that was about to kill Jaime at the top of their journey.
That was a great scene too, and Jaime got to use his Ash from Army of Darkness metal hand. And,
I think that you said that they had to play that hand at some point.
They did. Had to play their hand.
They had to play that hand, and they've been holding that hand back, and there it was.
Yeah.
It's funny too. I have such an irrational amount of sympathy for Jaime, because he has done horrible things.
Yeah.
But that moment when he's like, I would die in the arms of the woman I love. And it's like, she does not feel that way about it. It's your sister.
And she's still your sister.
She's still your sister, which is problem number one, as we know. But let's pretend that she wasn't.
Yeah.
She does not feel that way
about him. Things have changed. Yeah, things have changed.
Their relationship is completely different, and it's so sad that he's trying. I know it's gross, but it's also sad.
No, it is, because you as long as you see him as a fully rounded character, it's like, okay, that is warped, but that is how he feels, and he's sympathetic in other ways, so we can buy into that and be like, this is a tragedy. You shouldn't love your sister, but you do, and she doesn't love you back now.
Yeah. So and you're trying so hard to win her over.
Yeah.
And I think the minute he lost, she is so driven by the idea of power. The minute he lost his hand and could no longer be the warrior that he had been, I think she just lost interest.
Oh yeah, I think so too.
In her brother.
Yeah.
Moved on to her cousin.
Yeah, but so we got that glimpse though of the Sand Snakes. I'm using that terminology correctly, right?
Yes.
And so now we kind of were waiting for this collision course because here we've got Bron and Jaime, we've got these women, and
they know that Jaime's there.
They know why Jaime's there. They figured that out.
Yeah. Poor Marcella. And speaking of pawns, she has no idea. She's just wandering around her water gardens.
She might have to wake up quickly.
Yeah, she's going to have to wake up quickly because those girls are going after him and her, and they are not to be messed with. I don't know if, it'll be interesting to see that confrontation happen. Who's your favorite Sand Snake?
I'll pause to say that because it was still kind of an early introduction. Okay. So, yeah.
I think you can't beat a spear through the head.
Spear through the head is, it's pretty solid.
Tough to beat.
Yeah, there was a couple of great stuff in that episode, flipping back and forth. I guess all the stuff in Dorne because it was Bronn, right, who threw the blade through the face of one of the guys.
There was a lot of blades through heads.
Yeah, there was some cool blade through head action on this episode of Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Thank God. Yeah. Because it's been a fairly not as well. I guess it hasn't been bloodless. I must be pretty bloodthirsty to be like, there hasn't been enough murder.
Right, but this one upped the murder.
But thank God we saw a little more murder here. Do you have more items that you want to discuss, or shall I go?
I think that's the episode specific stuff.
Those are the episode specific. Poor I do want to say too that I kind of like, in terms of Marjorie, it's the ladies in that family that absolutely are the great manipulators because her dad, Cersei, is just playing him for a fool too. It's kind of amazing. And her poor brother did not see any of that coming. We have questions, socially sourced questions, so let's go through some of them. This one we'll talk about pretty quickly. I am sorry if I am brutalizing your name. Osri Rosian, Monsieur Osri on Twitter says, is Bran Stark ever going to make an appearance this season? Nope.
No. So you might have missed when that was kind of revealed. I believe it was the actor who plays Hodor who kind of revealed it at a convention appearance or something like that.
He did.
And it just said, that they are, and then it was confirmed that, the characters still exist. They will be back.
Yeah.
But they basically decided that they'd reached their point in the books and that there was so much going on.
Yeah.
Let's put them on the shelf for a season.
They're basically on pause. It'll be interesting to see how they reintroduce them, and Bran's got a really interesting arc, and I think that they may actually be pausing. I think it's actually a very significant arc.
Same here.
And we can talk about that in another segment.
But you just feel like that he's going through his metamorphosis,
Yeah, he's doing his Jedi training.
He's off in Dagobah.
Yeah, he's Dagobahing. He's training. He'll be back. He'll be back like a
Yeah, and Hodor's gonna Hodor.
Hodor's got a Hodor. Yeah, and that's not a spoiler. Like my take on what his arc may end up being is complete speculation.
No, because I mean, it's a non-spoiler spoiler to again say we've caught up to him in the books.
Yeah.
So anything we're saying about what might happen is speculation for the books and the show. It's like we don't know what's gonna happen when we see Bran next in either medium.
What do you think? So what do you think? I think he's going to have a very significant role in the ultimate fallout.
I do too. I think that it's a whole other sort of, important aspect of this world is, what's going on with him, and that sort of supernatural, controlling the animals element will come back in a bigger way. And that he will probably play into the end game of this story pretty significantly. And I know that, so for a while, some people were like, because again, on a show where everyone's spread out, but his stuff seems so removed that sometimes people are like, oh, Bran's scene. But I do think it's like he's going to come back into the mix of everyone else with pretty powerful abilities.
Hugely powerful abilities.
That will be a turning point for whom we don't know at the end.
For whom we don't know, but I would say this, and again, this is absolute speculation, not a spoiler at all, is that the dragons are out of control. He's a warg. He can control animals. He can get inside them and control them. What if he could get inside a dragon and control it? Suddenly, Bran Stark is the most powerful person in the realm.
He's learned how to train his dragon.
He learned how to train his dragon pretty well. I think I said this on an earlier episode, but I really do think that ultimately that will be a big part of his role in how this story unfolds. We're going to take it. What do you guys think? Do you think that Bran Stark is going to have a big part in Game of Thrones ultimately? Let us know.
Maybe riding a dragon.
Maybe riding a dragon. I would love him to be riding a dragon.
Yes.
Somebody wrote in, what's the point of dragons? And I can only say this. Dragons! Because they're dragons.
What's the point of existence, people? I don't know.
Because they're beautiful, mythic, fire-breathing beasts.
Dragons.
Glorious, glorious, dangerous, wild, fascinating,
I'm just
kind of cute.
They got big wings and they shoot flame from their mouth. Who doesn't want that?
It's a dragon.
Yeah.
So we'll move on from that. Okay. So Phil Turner asks, would you bring Ned Stark back from the dead if it meant that Joffrey came back too?
You know, I would. Because I miss Joffrey in the sense of like
you
that.
would rather bring Joffrey back?
I'm not saying I'd rather. I'm just saying this is a two-for we're being offered.
Okay.
I'm saying Joffrey was a fun presence on the show, a fun, hateable presence. And I'm not saying I miss him in a way you typically say miss, but you know, why not? You know, Ned Stark jumps out of a portal and says, I'm back, I'm alive, but I have this guy with me. You know?
So what if it was Joffrey or Ned?
No. I wouldn't take the. If I had to choose, I guess Ned. I mean, Ned is such an outlier on the show for being so noble and pure. I mean, I guess his sons are too, but you see where that's getting them. You know, it's like I don't know. Ned Stark. It's almost feels quaint to think about when he was part of the show.
Yeah.
And I know, especially for people who didn't read the books, because they were like, "Oh, Ned Stark, the hero of our story," you know. So it's hard to think about him being in play at this point.
Yeah.
Because how would he'd be like, you people are messed up.
You're so messed up.
Your red weddings and what are you doing?
I think it would be interesting. Well, first of all, if Pet Sematary has taught me anything, it's that if Ned Stark came back, he would be Joffrey. Okay, they don't come back right. They don't come back right.
Yeah. Sometimes dead is better.
Sometimes dead is better. But I would say this, what would be interesting for me, and I agree with you, I sort of miss having like a central figure to hate as much fun as it was to hate Joffrey. Like the Joffrey hate
He rallied the people.
He rallied us.
He rallied the viewers.
He gave us something to hate together.
Right.
We could unite in that. So I do kind of miss that. And he was so good in that role. But I think it'd be interesting to see Ned Stark change. Yeah. It would be interesting to see Ned Stark be like, the last time I tried to do the right thing, y'all cut my head off.
Right.
And so I don't know where my accent is coming from today. It's like I went.
That's yeah. There's certain parts of Westeros. Yeah. It's like,
certain parts of Westeros.
Ned has a varied background. Yeah.
He has a varied background. So Ned, if he came back and he changed and sort of, you know, what if he took that path of like, well, now I'm going to play this game and I'm going to play all of you. We're writing in a completely different story today, but I think the answer...
You should read her fanfic.
I write so much fanfic.
The Terrible Return of Ned Stark, which goes
I think
into
the
depth.
answer is ultimately yes, we would take Joffrey with Ned.
Huh?
Would you? I'm going to talk about book spoilery things now. So this is your warning. If you have not read the books and you do not want to be spoiled on them, then you should not watch the rest of this video.
Yeah, this will be our last topic, so you're safe to leave and know that we're not going to talk about other stuff. Book spoilers.
Book spoilers, and this is actually another question, and a lot of people ask this question, but Dan Proudfoot asks, what do you think of the R plus L equals J theory? Feasible question mark? So let's break that down for people who might not know what that equation
or like,
means.
why are you asking me like a physics high school
Why are we
question?
talking about math?
Right.
So R is Rhaegar Targaryen. L is Lyanna Stark, who is Ned's sister. If I'm not saying the names right, I think I am, but it's one of those things where you read them and I hear them in my own mind the way I hear them, damn it. Equals Jon Snow. So the theory is that they are actually, and I'm sure you guys, if you're watching this, know this, but we'll just say it in case. The theory is that, in fact, Ned Stark did not cheat on his wife, but that his sister, who, as we know, was kidnapped, taken by Rhaegar, got pregnant, had a son, and that he took that boy, who was Jon Snow, to raise him. And the reason that he called him his bastard and he never said who he was is because he would have been murdered.
Because they were killing
all of them.
All the Targaryens.
And so if they knew that this was a Targaryen who had a claim to the throne, he would have been murdered.
Yeah.
So he didn't. He protected his identity, even from his wife, from everybody. So that's the theory. Do I think it's feasible? Yes.
Oh yeah.
Totally feasible. And in fact, because the show is going to be spoiling things from the books, as we know. I think they're dropping great hints about it in this very episode. Let's talk about why.
Yeah, there was a lot suddenly. I mean, and you have to think, I mean, because I guess we could even say that we're not really going into book spoilers in that it's all theories that I guess you could come up watching the show. It's just that the books give you a lot more time and talk about those characters from the past to work on this. Yeah. But yeah, like you said, this episode brought up stuff in a big way. I mean, one thing that leapt out to me was to explicitly have Stannis say something a lot of people say, which is when his wife was going on a rant about Ned Stark, getting some tavern wench or whatever pregnant, being like, that was very Ned Stark-like,
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's the thing is like we have to, that's why it always felt weird is like Ned Stark, the noble, the true, like the one pure classic hero, cheated on his wife while he was off fighting a war, doesn't sound like Ned Stark, and so that was always a big reason to doubt this kid was really his son.
Yeah, exactly. He was such a man of integrity, just wasn't his way, which isn't to say that men of integrity don't cheat and have flaws. They do. But everyone has said this was unlike him.
Yes.
This particular act was very unlike him. So that's one thing. And then, so you have in that scene with Sansa and Littlefinger, they're talking about her. And they're talking about how Rhaegar kidnapped her.
Yeah.
But the story that Littlefinger tells is a grand gesture of love. He, won, and he threw the flowers at her feet, basically choosing her and declaring his love in front of his wife, which is not very nice. But, and then when she says, yeah, well, he chose her, and then he took her and he raped her, Littlefinger does this, like, And I don't think that little smirk was like, rape is so much fun.
Right.
At all.
It was like there's more to that story.
There's more to that story that you don't know. And then piece of evidence number 3 is the scene with Daenerys.
That's what we were talking about suddenly kind of out of nowhere, having, Sir Barristan and her to have this conversation about Rhaegar and hearing about him again from a different perspective in a better way than we're here, because we hear so much of like bad stuff about him, and then it was like, no, maybe there's more to that than we're hearing about.
Yeah, it paints him, he hated killing.
Very different picture.
It paints a very different picture of who Rhaegar was.
Yeah.
It paints a picture of maybe a connection that people didn't understand that birthed Jon Snow. So I think it is entirely plausible and probable, in fact, and I think the show may reveal it.
Yeah, and I think you also have to remember that, a couple things here, because it's like, will be a big twist if everyone's guessing it. I'm like, let's take into account some truths here. This series of books is taking forever for him to finish, so it's only giving people more time to come up with these theories. And he has acknowledged that some people have guessed correctly some stuff. He hasn't said what, but he said, some people have guessed some stuff. And that just seems like, there could be some weird veer into another direction, but it seems like we're being given a lot of reasons to think that this is likely where they're going.
The very first meeting that he had with David Benioff and T.B. Weiss before they started the series, the question that he asked was, who is Jon Snow's mother? And they answered correctly.
Yeah.
And he said, okay.
Yeah, we don't know what they said, but they said that they told him an answer, and he was like very happy.
Very happy with that answer. So which brings me very quickly to a follow-up question, which is a different person, Stephen Saul asks, Jon Snow and Ramsay Snow equal same mother. I don't think they know. No. I don't think they do have the same mother.
And make sure that people might not even realize that Snow is just the last name for bastards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the only reason I did pause on that is when thinking about Melisandre and making the smoke monster, because the biggest threats to Stannis at this point is Ramsay to some degree and his father. But that's not enough for me to really think that they're connected by blood.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
I really think it's the other thing is what it is, and that will be revealed. And one last book question really quickly is... Adrian Prime asked, do you feel that the before season press push was misleading in terms of the buzz was that it's going to be passing the books, but really Sansa just swapped stories with another character? I don't think we can make that judgment just yet. Because we haven't seen the rest of the season and we don't know what will be revealed.
Yeah, and also we shouldn't overread. Yeah, they did imply that this season is going to start spoiling stuff from the books, But they also didn't explicitly say, like, yeah, a ton of this season. I mean, it could just be the last episode or so, because I do think the brunt of this season is the 4th and 5th book.
Yeah.
You know, and mostly covering the major events from those. Again, but we're only theorizing because they will not get explicit about how they're adapting and what order and whatnot. So I understand some fans might have extrapolated and thought, oh, this season's just going to left and right be spoiling things from the book. But I think they're more saying this is the season we're going to start to in a notable way.
Yeah.
And then going forward, all bets are off.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Those are our thoughts. Many, many, many thoughts on Game of Thrones Season 5, Episode 4, plus a lot of other stuff.
Yes.
This week. Let us know your thoughts below and join us again next week for more walling and dragoning. Dragons of Wall.
Dragons on the wall, with the wall. Lots of walls and dragons.